Hey everybody, I am here with the director of Imaginary, Jeff Wadlow. Am I saying that right, Wadlow?
Wadlow, correct. Just like the tallest man who ever lived.
Is that true?
Yeah, my great uncle, Robert Wadlow, 8'11".
Oh, yeah, I feel like I've seen pictures of him, like old-timey pictures, right?
Yeah,
Wow, that he was actually related to you?
yeah, he's my great uncle.
Oh man, I didn't know I was talking to a Nepo baby, dude. uh,
Yes, when it comes to world records in height,
exactly.
I have a lot of nepotism on my side.
Did you inherit any of that? How tall are you?
I'm 6'1", and no, unfortunately.
Hey, I'd be happy with 6'1", man. Yeah, you've been in the horror genre since you started your career with Cry Wolf, and then you've done everything from Truth or Dare to Fantasy Island. On TV, you did some Bates Motel and The Strain. So, what keeps bringing you back to the horror genre? Because you've done other things too, such as Kick-Ass 2, but seems like you keep returning here to the genre.
Got some comedies as well. I mean, I like working in all different genres. I'm really trying to pattern my career after Richard Donner, who's famous for Lethal Weapon and Superman, but he also did The Omen, right? So he worked in all these different spaces. He did The Toy with Richard Pryor. People forget that.
Mhm.
And so I like working in different spaces the same way a chef likes working with different cuisines, I imagine. But horror is certainly one of my favorites because you're allowed to just be so creative and you can actually work within a different genres within horror. Like I like humor in my horror, but also like really intense, scary moments. And I try to make sure that my projects have both those things. So I love the flexibility and freedom that you can find within the horror space.
Yeah, and you definitely see that mix of tones in Imaginary, which is both funny and scary. A lot of the lines, like the ventriloquist line, like picking up a hobby. And I feel like in the second half, there's even more humor than the first, which is a little unexpected. But how do you go about finding the right tone? Is it something where you're doing multiple takes in different ways on set? Is it something you find in the edit? Is it all of the above?
All the above.
Yeah.
You write the script, you hear things a certain way, you see things a certain way. But then I love filmmaking because it's collaborative art, and you hire these amazing actors, and suddenly they come in and they're reading the lines, and they just say things differently. And I encourage them to find the humor in the moments and the absurdity of it. Just like Dick Donner, though, I never sell out the stakes, right? Like the stakes are always real. We never step out of the movie. We never make fun of the movie. But I mean, that ventriloquist line is a perfect example. I mean, that's what I would say if I was that therapist, right? Like you have to play to the honesty of the moment, and it's hilarious because it's an absurd scene. It's an absurd scene. Yes, it's scary and intense, but as soon as you take a second after it and sort of reflect on it, you're like, that was really insane. And so I think it's helpful to have someone comment on that, to even offer a laugh about it, because it gets the audience just to relax and connect deeper to the characters.
Yeah, I think that's a good point with the movie's never above itself. And I wouldn't call it campy, even though there are occasionally some campy line deliveries. I think like when Jess says that she has to destroy that fucking bear. Just like that, and delivered just so straight. I love that kind of mix.
It sets up such a huge turn, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge turn.
Yeah, I noticed in the shot that was used in the trailers a lot, but one of the scares in the film in the hallway with the neighbor character, that's, to me, pretty obviously a reference to Mario Bava's famous jump scare in Shock that has been referenced in other movies, right? Where the kid runs at the camera and then turns into a full-grown man.
Yes, yes. And they also ripped it off for Insidious. You've seen it in a bunch of
Yeah,
different...
The Prodigy was another one that did that. Yeah.
It works. Not Insidious, I'm sorry. They did it in Annabelle, the first Annabelle.
Oh, okay.
The kid runs at the door and then she hits the door and she's a full-grown woman. Yeah, I mean, that jump scare works. Listen, there's there's only 7 stories. There's really like 9 or 10 structures for jump scares.
Yeah.
And you're always just kind of riffing on them the same way, musicians are riffing off the same, notes. There's only so many musical notes, and you can combine them in all these interesting and varied ways. And certainly as storytellers, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Are there any other kind of direct homages or reference that you're making to other films in Imaginary?
Yeah, I would say Gloria's death is definitely a riff on the Deep Blue Sea when Samuel L. Jackson dies. Like mid aria, just something out of nowhere, just crushes them and just destroys them. And it's a great sort of unexpected moment. What's another good jump scare in the movie? I mean, the bear under the blanket is definitely like an Annabelle reference from that second Annabelle. I mean, misdirection. I mean, all the Insidious movies, anything that Lee Wanell has done uses a lot of misdirection. We try to do that.
Yeah, I'm a big Lee Winnell fan for sure.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of Gloria's death, I think it's the only death in the film, as someone whose job is counting kills sometimes. And it's done in a pretty tame way. She gets pulled behind a door and we see a blood pool. And the movie itself is PG-13, so I think that it appeals to a lot of the younger teen and kid audience who is maybe testing the waters of getting into horror. It might be a good like gateway horror. And I know that you worked on the relaunch of Are You Afraid of the Dark as well. And so was that kind of a goal of this film, is to kind of appeal to that audience?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really love the expression gateway horror. It sort of denotes that it's softer or it's meant for children.
Sure.
Where the truth is, it's really more of like 4-quadrant horror. Like we're just trying to pitch the biggest tent possible and invite everyone in. You know, Afraid of the Dark is definitely more targeted for a younger audience, but Imaginary really is for everyone. It's for anyone who understands the terrifying power of imagination.
Yeah, and I guess that holds true with the themes like the relationship between Jess and the stepdaughter, and like that's not going to be something that kids are really looking for.
And when it comes to rating too, I find the story often dictates what the rating should be. I mean, if you're making a movie about a real person who cuts people up with chainsaws, that's going to be a hard R, right?
Yeah.
Making a movie about an evil imaginary friend, you know, that conjures visions and is really using this stuffed teddy bear as an avatar. I mean, like, there's no reason that should be a hard R. It would be almost absurd. You're making blood and honey at that point, and then that's almost like a farce.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I often say in my reviews of movies and looking at stuff that when it comes to kid actors, it's really up to the director of what kind of performance you get, because they're so young. You know, obviously a kid is going to, different kids will have different acting acumen, just natural disposition to it, but it's really up to the director to get the performance you want out of them. And I think you did sure, I know as the director you don't want to take all the credit, but I think you did a great job with.
I'm going to tell you right now, we saw hundreds of kids, and I started thinking that. I was like, I'm going to be feeding this kid line readings. I'm going to be basically building this performance beat by beat. And then Piper Braun came in, man, and she just killed it. She did one take of that therapist scene in the audition, and it's as good, a continuous take, it's as good as the performance in the film.
Yeah, that therapist scene definitely drives home how great she is in this film. It just seems like she gets the material. She understands what we're going for, the different... I mean, while watching it, I remembered that in the trailer, they included her line of like, I don't think we should play anymore, Chauncey. And just, I was like, no wonder they included it in the trailer. It's just delivered so perfectly with her crying. I love it.
Yeah, she does this thing with her hand. She goes like this, I don't think we should be friends. I mean, she's so good. She's so good. So I have to push back a little bit on your thesis.
Sure.
When it comes to Piper, I really did not have to build that performance for her. Like she showed up and she brought her A game.
Is there any difference in the way that you approach directing a child actor as opposed to an adult actor, or do you kind of go about the same way?
I don't have a lot of time, so I don't really rehearse on the day with them. So, you know, normally with adult actors, they show up on set, we rehearse and block the scene, then they go to hair and makeup while we start lighting the set and we start placing cameras, and then it's sort of designed to all come together. Then once they're back from hair and makeup, the lights are up, the cameras are in place, we can shoot. You can't do that with kid actors because you can't waste the time. So what you end up doing is you block and rehearse without them. You send them straight to hair and makeup, so that, you know, they're getting ready quickly. They show up on set and you can start to shoot because your hours are limited because of child labor laws. And so that can be very challenging. You also have to design your coverage sometimes to isolate the kid. So you're like, okay, I'll shoot my master, I'll punch in for the coverage on the kid, but then I'll send the kid home because I've run out of time. And then I'll do my coverage on my adult actors without the child actor even in the room. I'll have someone off camera reading the lines. So it's just about being really prepared and having a plan and executing it with confidence, because there's no wiggle room when you're dealing with a child actor.
I guess to that point, it goes to show, yes, how important it is to find the right kid actor who you don't have to spend the time shaping the performance, who gets it naturally and can do it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in rehearsals ahead of time. So I bring my actors to location a week before we start shooting, and I go through all the scenes with them and we read them endlessly and we rewrite lines, because I like to get to a point where we all feel good about the script before we start shooting. So I'm not reinventing the wheel on the day, because there's so many other things to do when you're making the movie. You don't want to be rethinking the script.
Exactly. You shot in New Orleans, I saw at the end of the credits, right? And is that where the set for, I don't know if it's called Imagination Land or the Never Ever, but the big set piece in the third act, is that where that set was built?
Yeah, the Never Ever. We shot every frame of this movie in New Orleans. And it was purely because they have amazing facilities, incredible crew, great locations. The movie was not set in New Orleans initially; it was set in Connecticut. But when we started, running the numbers and thinking about where it made sense logistically to shoot the movie, it became obvious it was going to be New Orleans. And I'm a big believer in just setting the movies where you shoot them. Mm-hmm. So instead of trying to make New Orleans look like Connecticut, I just said, nope, this movie now takes place in Louisiana, and we're just going to embrace it.
I like that. Yeah, I really liked the set for the Never Ever. I'm assuming it was like digitally extended, obviously, but how much of that was a practical set?
It was largely a practical set. Basically, the foreground, the midground was all practical. I mean, we built that turning hallway, that curving, that warped hallway. That was built, and then of course we extended it into infinity.
Yeah,
it was really inspired by the works of M.C. Escher. We had lots of talks about the Upside Down and Stranger Things.
Did Labyrinth play into any?
It was a big influence. The works of Lewis Carroll and Roald Dahl were also influential. And then I just had really brilliant collaborators. Greg Semkow is a concept artist I always work with. He's done all my movies. I've never met him in person. I just found him on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Working on a He-Man movie. And then Megan Rogers was our production designer, and she did a great job. She had just an incredible art department. And they really just killed it.
Yeah, and the bear itself, too, that's a practical suit. And I know that my buddy Dane DeLegro, he was the super performer, right, as the bear. Yep. And were there also animatronics involved with that?
Yeah, there was like 4 puppeteers working the animatronics in the face. And then the teeth and tongue were CGI. And we did a little bit of like, we kind of made him a little skinnier, did like a dog leg on his knee. That was done digitally. So, and it's basically what they did in Pan's Labyrinth. Like, you have an amazing suit, you have a great performer, and then you augment it digitally. And it was the same company, Spectral Motion, that did Pan's Labyrinth, who also did our movie, and they're just the best in the business.
Yeah, and as far as the other appearances of Chauncey that he takes, the spider creature and the thing with the TV eyes, which I thought was really cool. What was the balance of practical and digital effects there?
It's be like more black marbles, like sort of like teddy bears have these marble eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, honestly, it just happens on the script stage. You start riffing, coming up with cool images. Then you start working with concept designer like Greg, and you come with some initial artwork. And then you get, Megan Rogers from a set standpoint, or you get Spectral Motion from a creature standpoint. And it's just very iterative. You just do a lot of different versions until you land on something that's actually achievable.
Well, I love hearing about that collaborative nature. And I think that the way the movie ends up there is really exciting to me with that space and those visuals. I think it's a great way to bring the story home.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And just last time, real fast, you mentioned Lewis Carroll. Is Alice a reference to Alice in Wonderland?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I figured as much. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
I love talking to fans of movies, so your questions are really thoughtful, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate hearing that. Didn't want to just ask if you had an imaginary friend as a child.
I get that question one more time.
I know, right? I figured. All right, well, thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate it, man. Hey, everybody. I'm here with DeWanda Wise, star of Blumhouse's Imaginary. Hey, DeWanda. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
This is kind of your first horror movie. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you
definitely
were in
my first horror movie.
Okay, yeah, because you were in an episode of The Twilight Zone and Jurassic World Dominion, kind of cousins to the genre, but
yes.
Yeah, as far as like straight horror goes, this, I think, is your first one. So was that a different experience for you? Are you a fan of horror films?
I am a major fan of horror. I just, I think it's I love genre in general because it allows you as an actor to have like the highest stakes possible. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the stakes are always life or death. So there's just more room to play. Like it's hard to be too much when you're running for your life.
That's true. Yeah. And especially in a movie like this, where it's not just about being afraid, there's a mix of tones. There's some comedy in there. And I was talking to Jeff about this, and I was just wondering like how you approach finding that balance between the humor and the scares. Do you do different line readings with multiple takes, or do you just kind of find it during rehearsals?
I don't do anything. I mean, I honestly, I think it's the same thing. Like, I definitely have a comedic sensibility, and if I'm working on comedy, like I know, I know what's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But in the context of anything that, like, because the genre is horror, so the comedy had to just come completely naturally. Because otherwise, also, you're not really going to get the laughs. Like, there's one laugh in the movie. Like, we're all very in it and very serious. And there's one laugh that Veronica Falcone gets, when she's like, has she been like practicing like ventriloquism? No one laughed on set. Like nobody thought that was funny in the moment. Like she meant it, I meant it from the point of view of my character. Like, not that I know of. Like, I don't know what these kids are doing. I'm busy. I have drawings to draw. You know what I mean? So yeah, the humor. Thankfully, all of us have a lot of experience naturally. I mean, if anything, we had to keep pulling Piper back because Piper's hilarious and she comes from sitcom.
Oh, okay. Yeah. She was
funny.
Excellent. Yeah.
There were some takes, like there was one moment where she's like shutting the door in Jessica's face and the slow creep she did once. I was like, okay, Piper, pull it back. We gotta get you back from multicam. That's a little too far, girl.
Right, yeah, because multicam is more of like a theater experience and performance where it's less pushed in and you're playing more to the back of the crowd. Whereas with something like this, you're going for a more natural reading. Yeah. That's so funny. How have you worked with a lot of kids before?
I've worked with a lot of kids.
Okay.
I've worked with a lot of kids. Jeff thinks that I enjoy working with children because I prepare like an 8-year-old, which is to say that I come to work prepared. Once you have a lot of like professional actors, especially when they get older, they're so used to the muscle of it that they'll show up and they're not memorized. Like they'll show up to set and they have their sides for the day and they're like, okay, what am I saying today? Me and 8-year-olds prepared like 2 months before.
Yeah.
So.
I wasn't sure if you meant, when you started that, I wasn't sure if you meant like you were underlining your lines in crayon or something like that.
Yes, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Not crayon.
Yeah.
Color pencil. But
okay, great.
I prepare with the enthusiasm of an 8-year-old. And one thing that I try to remember from kids, one thing I love about working with kids is you will very rarely hear a young performer say like, no. Like a young performer will always try. Mm-hmm. Like the director will throw something out and they will at least try it. There won't be an argument. There won't be my character would never, so there's an openness to working with children that's really inspiring.
And you try to take that same approach? Yeah,
I just try to be like, well, let's try it.
That doesn't work for me. Nothing like that.
Yeah, for what? Let's just try it. Unless I'm shooting on film and then I'm like, do not waste this.
That's right. Yeah, that is limited and valuable. We cannot afford multiple takes. So I'm sure in all these interviews you've been asked about imaginary friends you've had as a kid. I'm not going to do that. But I did want to ask.
I've had none. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. But I did want to ask, a lot of the movie, and maybe you've been asked this a lot too, but a lot of the movie involves how you're moving back into your childhood home. And from what I read, it appears like you had a relatively normal childhood and upbringing. And I was wondering what your relationship is with your childhood home and if you have fond memories there. Because I myself, the house I grew up in, my sister now owns, and I visit occasionally. But, I have some good memories there. I have memories I would rather forget that, like Jess did. So I was wondering, is there anything from your past and your childhood that you think informs you and your work now? Or are there things that like you'd rather just leave that in the past?
I think, part of what attracted me to the story to begin with was the very simple reality that not every child has an idyllic childhood. Mm-hmm. Like there wasn't a home that I would go like, oh, that's my childhood home. We moved a lot. Okay. I'm from Maryland. There are homes in my family, like my grandparents, lived in the same place and those houses are still, thankfully, in my family. So there are certain like touchstones, But I think in general, you know, I've always been super emotionally available. I've always been an extreme empath.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one, it's an interesting thread between me and Piper Braun in terms of like who we are as human beings and performers. And then it was like likewise a thread between, you know, Jessica and Alice having experienced something that is kind of like far beyond your years, you know, losing a parent because of a mental health illness or like, you know, because of cancer, you know, at 5, 6 is just, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot for a kid, you know, and as I always joke with my reps, you know, I lived a life. Like by the time I was in college, I kind of had this like just vat of life experience. Like I actually feel like I had to grow into my type because my experiences were so far beyond my years. And it was just weird. It's just weird for a 25-year-old to have like the level of depth in life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what drew me to the project to begin with, you know, besides wanting to work in the genre. I just read it and it kind of like cracked me open a little bit. And, you know, it's been so lovely hearing from other people who responded to like, you know, the father thread or, you know, whatever they've responded to in watching this movie.
Yeah, especially those scenes with your dad in the hospital, I think would resonate with a lot of people, just having to deal with those kinds of situations later in life. I like it when horror movies can be fun, but still touch on things like that, where there's still a through line and kind of a purpose to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you get to do, there's a little bit of action here, especially in the third act when you guys are like in the Never Ever.
Yes.
Did you get to do any of that? Did you have a stunt double for a lot of it? Like I know there's the fall where your character hurts their ankle.
Yes.
And a little bit of fighting with, I believe it was my buddy Dane DeLegro in the big.
Yes, Dane.
Yeah. Big old basketball player Dane.
So tall.
He's so tall.
I remember the first thing I said to Dane, he like shows up and I just look at him and I was like, so we're covering up that face? Like we had all we talked about was like him wanting to play an actual human being in something. And
I know that poor guy.
He's
just
finally getting a chance. Did you see the headline?
No, I didn't see that.
He's doing this show where he's like playing a basketball player, this Netflix show. And I was like, yes, Dane, you deserve this.
Yeah, because like everyone, you know, all us guys, we want to be taller. And he's like, no, not this tall.
No, you don't.
Like,
yeah,
not this tall. I can't get normal
creature
roles.
feature tall. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that was the only stunt. Shout out to my stunt double, actually. That was the only thing that I didn't do that fall.
Okay.
And every time, oh my God,
gnarly.
that scene. Every time that she hits you with that ankle twist.
Yeah, and the sound design, it's gross.
It's so gross. It's so gross. Jeff and I were absolutely struggling. By the time, it's so funny. The first like 2/3 of the movie, we're like, oh, are we making a domestic drama? And then the last third of the movie, we were like, we need to work on an action film because I was struggling not to make Jessica too athletic.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? Like it just, something kicks in and you have to be like, oh, right, she's limping. She is not an athlete. Okay.
Yeah, do you
Jessica
have an athletic background?
She does not work out at all. Say it again.
Do you have an athletic background? Is that like what you were trying to tamp down, just the natural?
I mean, just naturally, sure. And also, you know, working in the action space, like getting to Jurassic had been such a goal for so long. And I'd been training to like work in the action space for so long. So I was very deliberate about Jessica just being soft and moving soft and her body being soft. And so, yeah, we would get to these moments and it would be something simple. It'd be like, I'd be bounding up those steps like 2 at a time. And I was like, Jessica is not bounding up the steps, DeWanda.
That's
just walk up the steps.
And I never really considered that kind of gear shift you would have to do between characters of like, yeah, Jessica's an artist. She's not.
She's an artist,
yeah,
okay?
like a special forces.
You don't see a Peloton in this house.
Are you an artist? Were you able to do any of those drawings that Jessica does?
Yeah, that skill set came from She's Gotta Have It. This is actually, I feel like this is the third. I might have to retire playing visual artist because it's the third one I've played.
Okay.
And I just refreshed the skill. So, you know, in the months leading up to playing Jessica, I just like took classes again and was just like painting and playing around.
That's so cool because I feel like it'd be very easy to just be like, all right, we're going to start the shot as I'm finishing this brush stroke, right? And then, you know, not have to worry about it. But
then every visual artist watching would just be like,
Yeah, my wife is an artist, and her favorite game while watching movies is, especially relevant to Imaginary, is seeing the drawings that are supposed to be done by a child, and she's like, "Those were done by like the production
Yes,
designer."
and we were so neurotic about that. Shout out to actually Bonnie. She did all of our like child scrawlings, and we were so like, oh, that would be misspelled, or like that's where we started. We were like, Jessica spells too well. Like 5-year-old Jessica spells a little bit too well. We got to like, mess this up a little bit. But yeah,
it's hard to emulate that style because like you'd think it'd be simple to just be like, oh yeah, make stick figures, but like I don't know, kids are so unbound by everything. They just have free flowing imagination, and I think in Imaginary there are a few drawings where I was like, yeah, that really does seem like a kid's drawing. Like one of the faces, I forget what was going on with it, but it just looked wild, and I was like, yeah that checks out for sure.
She had a good time.
Yeah. That little girl also playing Young Yu was so adorable. She was so cute. Did you get to meet her, or since you wouldn't have shared scenes?
Rhythm Herd, thank you for asking about her.
Yeah.
Rhythm Herd is one of 4 phenomenal young performers, and I worked with her sister Melody on Fatherhood.
Oh, cool.
So Jeff was like, okay, we need to cast a younger version of you. I said, say less. They're the Herd girls. They're from Maryland. And I also had a really, really great time working with her mom, Nisha.
Okay.
So I just texted her and I was like, hey, and you'll see her mom. So we have Rhythm, and then we have Tempo playing baby version of me.
Yeah.
And in the opening title sequence, Nisha reluctantly agreed to be my mom in flashback.
Oh, that's so cute.
It's very sweet.
That's great that you had a working relationship with them already. They're from the same home state. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. I was told I only have one question left, so I'm debating over asking about your experience as an RA in college, or just what those blue balls were that you squeezed and that popped everywhere, because it kind of made me feel gross. I don't know if
That's
those
so
are like...
funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do 2 for 1.
Okay.
The blue balls were just like, just normal balls, and then I think the props department must have like cut them open and filled them with blue paint. And I'm disgusting. Like I am one of those people, I feel like you're either a Dr. Pimple Popper person or you're not.
And you are?
And I am such a pimple popper person.
No!
I am such a pimple popper
Will
person.
you watch those videos?
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. It's calming, it's soothing. It's one of my favorite things in the world.
I'll pop my own pimples, but that's the extent of it. Like, do you do other people's? Like,
oh, I will pop. Look, if you have a pimple to pop, okay, I will turn into a surgeon.
Yeah.
For you.
I'm sure.
I feel like come there with my little tools.
Oh no, that's awful.
And I love being an RA. I'm still that type A. I'm still the kind of type A that requires you to be an RA. And I feel like I use those RA skills all the time, working with kids.
Yeah.
The EP of it all. Shout out to NYU and, their RA program, because I'm still the same person. I am still just RA DeWanda.
Well, that person is awesome and was lovely to talk to. So thank you so much for your time, DeWanda. It was great meeting you.